to get these children where they need to be. Again, whether that's legal custody, whether that's adoption, whether that's permanency plan. Some of those are cost savings. Some of those will remain in the custody of children's services, whatever's in the best interest of the kid. But as we went through that list, we've worked with Mr. Mantel and his folks and Ms. Moore, and we've gone through each name on that list, each kid on that list. We've poured through that. Right away, we noticed there were 16 of that 89 that had already been taken care of. So that was good to get that head start on that list. And in the last 24 months, actually probably more towards the last few months, we've really started hitting that pretty hard. So 16 were off the list. 16 of that total past 24 have been resolved in one way or another, whether that be a legal custody where we find a private individual who says, I want custody of these children, I want to raise these children, and we do the paperwork and we work through the court to get them placed out of the custody and the care that costs the children's services into additional cases we have filed in the court. So we're in court now in 36 additional cases, whether that's legal custody to a private individual, or getting through the hearing process, or a permanent custody filing, those types of things. And then there are 21 more that we're working to get the paperwork ready to get into court this year. My goal is to have that backlog caught up by January 1. It's a lofty goal. These cases are not, if everybody agreed on what should happen and what's in the best interest, these cases would flow pretty quickly. But you have to protect the due process rights and the fundamental rights as a parent to rear your children. They have to have hearings. They can have attorneys. You have guardian ad litem and CASAs that make a recommendation. You have the agency itself has worked with these kids in the case plan to say this is what they think, and then ultimately the judge has to decide. And when you put more than one person in a room, there's going to be disagreement, and discourse has to happen. So these aren't cases that we can say, okay, we've got these 36 filed, and they're going to be done by this day. That's just not how the justice system is set up to work, and we all understand that, but it's worth saying. So that's the goal with that. Additionally, we are trying to address those that haven't gotten to the 24 month yet, the 12 to 24 month. We want to make sure that we're not waiting until 24 months to address these cases. If at 12 months it becomes apparent that we need to do something, put these kids on a different direction, maybe the parents need a few more months and everything will be fine and we can reunify. I mean, ultimately, if the parents do what they need to do to become better parents, that's what we want to do. But there's other legal custodies, permanent custodies we can look to file earlier, which will also reduce the costs. With the caveat, what do we need to do to protect the children and what's in their best interest? So in that category, we have 17 legal custody motions have been filed. 7 permanent custody motions have been filed. 9 have been resolved, for instance, return to their parents, that kind of thing. And then 27 are left to look at what the next step is in filing. So we're cutting down that list as well. So the goal is by next year, the cost associated with the delays is reduced. And that's it, unless you have any questions.
Questions? No. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for that update.
I do have general questions.
Sure.
Not just Mr. Keenan.
I'll just thank you, all three. Clearly, you guys are communications flowing. Everybody's working together and understands the magnitude, truly, what we're dealing with here. Not just from a financial standpoint, but from an emotional, social aspect of kids being in care too long. And prosecutor team, I like the laser focus of, hey, 24 is not the not the standard. It's, you know, making sure we're closer in line to that 12 and 24. So thank you for that. This time, any additional comments, questions?
Yeah, if I could, I really want to draw out a couple things that you each said during your discussion there. The comment that was made was the current funding, and this is important because I really, this is going to be a topic of great debate in our community. It will be. You know, when we're doing an additional 2 on top of a 1, and which will be a total of 3. You know, just to give everyone an idea of what that looks like, and we'll be doing more and more of that as far as communicating what the cost is per 100,000 valuation to the voters. But you know, DD is sitting at a 7 mil, I think it is. So to equally, you know, I think those populations are equally vulnerable and important to our community. So that may give everybody an idea of what that looks like as far as valuation or what that could mean. But the comment was made about our current, and I think, Ms. Morton, you made a comment about our current funding level is sufficient for 130 kids. Do the math, everyone. Yes, please, and that's why I'm asking is for you to discuss this. Please do, yes, and Ryan, if you could, and we'll probably be doing some of this, because I really want to bring some of this out for everyone who sees this, because my concern is that if we don't put out this information right now and really clarify, that it'll cause, there will be some people who will just go out and start saying things and not knowing or not really understanding the facts. And I think it's important that we get this right off the bat, and then we'll start sharing more and more and more. But go right ahead, I'm sorry.
No, so to Tammy's point, and I think Commissioner Powell brought it up, Chairman Powell brought it up, that 130, and that is what we would consider, what I would refer to as standard care. So a child that does not require any excessive medical care or any type of inpatient, outpatient, consistent.
Unruly.
So
Yeah, right.
transportation, for instance. So we're talking about 130 at a very standard care, and I don't like to use the word typical rate because
Basic.
each entity has their own rate, but in our region, the rates are similar when we're talking about standard foster care. So we do have, you know, you mentioned DD, they've been a good partner on sharing some costs on children who we share services with. So I want to be clear that 130, that is 130 children who would require what I think most of us would understand as standard typical care that you think of when you want to raise a child: clothing and food, basic necessities, you know, what that may cost the household for utilities, that kind of thing. So a very standard rate of care. So we are not talking about children, because again, every child who comes to us has experienced trauma, but there are levels of trauma, as we are all aware. And we're not talking about, again, long-term facility care. Again, that could be mental health, physical health, emotional health, that could be behavioral situations. So, you know, those types of care are extremely expensive. And again, I want to be clear, I want the community to understand that all of these children we treat as an individual child, you know, to the prosecutor's point, but some children need more excessive and extensive care than others. So I want that to be clear.
Do you think the level of trauma to these children has increased?
I've been here two years, so 24 months. In the 24 months I have been here, I would say that's an accurate statement, that it has increased in the time I've been there. Now, we have people who have been in this world for a long time. Obviously, you know, I spent 20 years in public education, so I am aware and worked with some of the children who we
Sure.
have in care. So, Commissioner, I think that's an accurate statement, and there doesn't seem to be a sign of that trauma decreasing in the near future.
If you don't mind, I noticed in Hamilton County, Cincinnati proper, did a levy increase. I think it was on the last November general election. I know or it's on this one. I think it's on this one. They're asking for an increase, and their reasons, 2 reasons specifically, was additional children. Okay, I mean, they've got an influx of children, which it was spoken by someone about this is a statewide issue. We are seeing this everywhere. And the level of trauma that they're seeing, the increase in trauma, which is causing some of the additional expenditures that we're seeing, you know, and that's what they're saying on their levy increases, because they're just inundated with this.
So to your point, for a variety of reasons, we can't give specific information about
Sure,
cases.
Sure.
But I had a meeting I had with one of our administrative team yesterday, one of our supervisors. To your point, we children who we have in our care for whatever reason, once they start working with our staff and start working with counselors, we are then discovering, and this happened less than 24 hours ago, I was informed of a couple of situations where we're discovering trauma that we didn't know about and that had not been reported to us previously, but now we're learning from the child because they feel safe enough to speak to their placement. So not only are we removing for the initial trauma that we're aware of, we're then finding, to your point, increased situations and increased trauma that these children have locked away. And, you know, that's very, you know, again, it's just a little ironic you brought that up. Yes, I just had to sit down with our investigative supervisor yesterday, and he said, hey, you need to be aware of this, and this, because now we have additional issues on these cases. And you know, it's hard to see. I mean, you know, it's hard to watch. It's hard to know. But, you know, there's a group that you always hear people say, well, someone has to deal with it. Well, the someones are here, and the someones are out in the field right now.
Right.
And it's not easy. And you know, none of this is exaggerated.
I do appreciate each one of you being here. I know the sheriff just had to step out for a second. As I mentioned, this is a statewide issue. This has been brought up. As a matter of fact, there was a very impromptu discussion with the governor a few weeks ago in one of our county commissioner association meetings. We are not the only ones dealing with this it is everywhere. And one of the discussion points is the increase, the fact that the opioid epidemic is so profound, it's so huge now. And it's not just large cities, it's now in the rural counties, it really is. And the comment that was made, I brought it up to the governor, I think it really opened some eyes. There was other county commissioners that really supported what was said, was the introduction of fentanyl, and Prosecutor Tiemann, you could probably speak to this. I know the sheriff, I'm sorry, he had to step out for a second, but the introduction of fentanyl seems to have really amped this up. And one of the concerns in relation to CPS is that we're hearing from clinicians, people that are actually dealing on the recovery side with fentanyl exposure, where they're using fentanyl, and, you know, everything's being cut with fentanyl, it seems like, and maybe you can speak more to that, prosecutor. But that the recovery time in regards to fentanyl is longer, or in some cases non-existent, that people are really struggling with that, getting over fentanyl, and that the correlation to CPS, and in the case of parents who are addicted and lose their children into TC, temporary custody, that 24 months isn't happening. It's just not happening. And there's a concern that, yeah, we can do drug courts. Yes, we can invest in that. Yes, we can spend all of these millions and millions and millions of dollars in Ohio on recovery, but that's not going to solve our children's issue. That the time frame is longer, and therefore we have children languishing in temporary custody that should be moved to permanent custody quicker as a result of the fact that their parents aren't going to recover in an acceptable amount of time. Would you like to comment on that, or Prosecutor Tiemann?
I just had one more point related. You had brought up Hamilton County, and obviously that's not a technical neighboring county, but it's close. It's
sure.
Major. You know, I mentioned Adams County. Adams County did run and successfully pass a children's services levy, I believe, a year and a half ago. I know it's been within my tenure, so because of these issues. So I want to point out that, again, this isn't limited to us, and there are other counties facing this. And like I said, a neighboring county did run and successfully pass, which was helpful for them. So I think that's important for the community to know that we're not the only ones, to your point, in this
Right.
situation, and there are other counties who are successfully moving forward with some additional funding.
Okay.
I can speak to the drug epidemic a little bit if that's all right.
Sure, please.
I came into the law in 1998. New drug, a couple years old, OxyContin was here, and we've seen this evolution. We all know it, so I'm not going to spend 20 minutes talking about it. But yes, fentanyl, and there's even some more powerful versions of fentanyl, fluorofentanyl, acetafentanyl. Every time we think we know what the biggest bang drug is on the market, it changes. China is manufacturing more and more of these kinds of drugs. They're getting over here for basically the open border we have in our southern states, across our southern states, and through our ports. And at the beginning of COVID and various policy changes, we've seen where we were getting on our highways coming down. US 23 is a pipeline to major cities, to those cities like Huntington, Portsmouth, Charleston, Route 35 through Gallia County. They're experiencing the same thing. And we're seeing, instead of the grams, where 10, 15 years ago, Sheriff, if I'm right, 20-some grams of cocaine or what have you was like, wow, huge hit. Well, we skipped ounces, and now we're in pounds. We're seeing pounds come down our highways. And a lot of those now are not cut they're still in the bricks with the Mexican cartel stamp on them. I mean, so that's how much we're seeing. That's how much our law enforcement is dealing with here in Scioto County, in Huntington, in Greenup, Kentucky, everywhere. And you are absolutely correct. It's not a Scioto County problem. It's a national problem. And in a lot of ways, Scioto County is ahead of that problem. But it is taxing our manpowers and our resources. We can't wait on the state to come in and rescue us. It's been kind of a theme in Portsmouth and Scioto County for a couple of years now. We gotta cinch up our boots and go to business. And so you're correct. Fentanyl is the main thing. There's some other drugs that are starting to come in the market. But where it's really bad is, what is pervasive is somebody might think they're buying cocaine or heroin, and it's not. It's fentanyl. Even some of our methamphetamine, which is the other major drug that we see, which isn't manufactured here anymore. It's going through the same production channels that fentanyl is going through. We're seeing a purer version of methamphetamine, and sometimes that methamphetamine is laced with fentanyl. And you're talking about deadly things. The scary thing about that is if somebody is trying to do the right thing and they get clean and then they relapse and they take their old hit of fentanyl, we're seeing a lot of deaths. And so you're absolutely right. Fentanyl, we've seen this exponential jump in problems, and it's not even a trickle down. It's hit the children of these families head on, and that's why the agency is working in 1980s laws. It's a square peg into a round hole. It's a square peg in a round hole. You got 90 days might work to clean up a house that was dirty. It doesn't work to get people clean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess I should ask this while you were standing. Do you all feel that a major, I can't put a percentage on this, do you think the majority of our problems, and I'm talking about children that are put in placement as a result of, X, is a lot of that directly or indirectly associated with the opioid epidemic? Would that be a fair assessment? I see a lot of heads shaking yes. You're not on camera right now, but I see a lot of heads shaking yes. Sheriff Thurman just joined us. Would you agree with that assessment?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, we're seeing this throughout the county. Every every other day we hear about CPS having to take custody of a child because of an opioid issue of some kind, or just the other day, a suspected child rapist, and I say that way because, you're innocent until proven guilty, but I mean, we're seeing a lot of child-related crimes in our community, so it's a very big issue. And let me ask this question, and Sheriff Thurman is with us, and the prosecutor can maybe speak to this as well, which I know you can actually. Do you feel that our opioid epidemic is getting better? That the level of opioid abuse in our community is getting better?
I see two no's.
I believe that we have a great team in place, cooperation between all of our agencies, law enforcement agency, prosecutor's office, your board, in providing the necessary resources, and also the cooperation with Children's Services and Job and Family Services now. But with our open borders that we have and the massive amounts of drugs that are crossing our borders and coming into our communities, I believe that is only getting worse. We've added, my office has added, and working in conjunction with the other agencies, added an additional drug task force or major crimes task force, which is assisting prosecutor Tieman's special victims unit, and the cooperation that we have with his office and the other agencies within Scioto County are addressing those shortfalls and doing what we can to protect the innocent. But when you look at how long we have had the drug epidemic within our county and how much parenting skills we have lost those, because I mean the addiction and those people under addiction having children and not being able to pass on those necessary skills which contribute to the problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Prosecutor Tiemann.
100%. I think we're doing more with what we've got than we ever have before. I think there's more collaboration, but the problem's not going to go away. I mean, we've had crime since Cain and Abel, and we're going to continue to have crime. And unfortunately, we haven't figured out a way to predict crime before it happens. That's just in the movies. So, but yeah, the problem's not going to go away. These people that want to see this country degrade are not going to go away, and addiction is not going to go away.
Thank you. The reason I brought that up is because I'm very concerned that, and we have mentioned this at the state level multiple times. We've talked with the governor, we've talked with our legislators, is that we're pouring millions and millions and millions of dollars into recovery. And as we do feel that is important, our children are being left behind. They are, in a big way. Again, even though we have seen increases in funding at the state level, they've been modest increases. And we are still ranked at the bottom of the 50 states as far as children's initiatives, as far as funding for children. Our CPS, our Job and Family Services, ODJFS are severely underfunded right now. And this drug epidemic has taken it to a whole new level. So it's important that everybody understand that in making their decisions. I think our children are our treasure and should be taken care of. We are all taxpayers in this room, so we don't take any of this lightly. We have talked about this for a while, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Children's Services has been operating in a deficit. Now, they had carryovers for a while. They did. But this signal was sounded, or this siren was sounded a long time ago, that the carryovers were being depleted because of the severity of the housing cost and what we was dealing with as far as numbers. And that dates back to the middle of 2020. Jason, if I'm not mistaken, we started seeing reductions in our carryover according to the financial reports then. So that siren, that clarion call was going out by leadership, but we weren't seeing a reduction in the numbers because of the severity of the problem. And we're still dealing with that, and it's getting better. And as you heard today, citizens of Scioto County need to understand it's getting better, but it's going to take time. It is going to take time. So I wanted to draw all that out, and the investment we've already given. My goodness, Scioto County's doing everything they could. The Special Victims Unit was just mentioned. We're trying our best, along with the prosecutor, sheriff's office, and then their entire collaboration with other agencies, New Boston, Portsmouth, everybody under SVU, to battle the crimes against children and special victims, which covers a broad range of individuals. We're investing, we've invested, the Board of County Commissioners invested, funded, you guys are working that hard, in adding attorneys to Children's Services. That has been paid for, that has been added to the prosecutor's office. We used to be a 0.5 FTE on that, a part-time person, and now we're at 2.5. So there's been an investment there. So we're doing our best. We're doing everything we could. We saw this coming, and that feeds into the whole reorganization of the structure, where we're at now, and here we are. And we've got to take all of this very seriously. Nobody likes more taxes, nobody. And trust me, we're working, you mentioned it, one of you mentioned it about, we take it serious, and we want to try to keep the costs as low as possible and everything else, and you're looking for ways. I think the word, opportunities for improvements and things like that. And we are too. We're looking at other avenues, actually pretty extreme avenues to counter this, to the taxpayers. We are actually working on that right now, and hopefully we'll discuss that more later on, the efforts by Commissioner Powell. But we just need everyone to understand the magnitude of the situation and to see it for what it is. All right, and I'll finish with that. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
Any additional comments?
Just listening to the conversation with our guest and looking at the numbers since I've been here, it breaks my heart that we have, nearly 400 children, 365 at the most current count. And then the number of hours your caseworkers are putting in. It breaks my heart. But it tells me that this county is doing more than what they can to help the children. When I used to hear the number, when I first came in, there was not quite 200 in custody. And I've been here 6 years, and now it's almost 400. Those numbers, when I used to think about it, it was just, I couldn't put my head around it. But the one thing that has become clear to me in the last 6 months, a year, is that although the numbers are high, the hours they're working are enormous.